Let's now go straight to Tel Aviv in Israel, where the US President Joe Biden has landed to kick off his West Asia tour that, of course, has got the world talking. US President Joe Biden has landed at the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. These are, of course, live visuals coming in from Israel, from the airport. The US President has arrived. This is the first leg of his tour. Israel will be Biden's first stop in what will be a 4-day-long high-stakes diplomacy exercise across West Asia. The visit, of course, will be dominated by efforts to persuade Gulf allies to pump more oil and bring Israel and Saudi Arabia closer together. Israel is currently the first stop. Once again, these are live visuals coming from the airport in Israel, where the US President has landed to kick off his West Asia tour. President Biden will spend 2 days in Jerusalem. He'll meet with both Israeli leaders and even Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on Friday in the West Bank. And afterward, in an event that the world will be watching, he will take a direct flight from Israel to Saudi Arabia, a first for an American president. And now to discuss more about this visit, joining us now is our correspondent Jody Cohen. She's in fact at the airport in Israel with the latest. Jody, the US President has arrived. Tell us, what's on the agenda?
So, as you can hear behind me, the ceremony is just starting. This is the welcoming ceremony for President Biden. His plane has landed and he is going to be met there on the tarmac, just at the end of the red carpet behind me, by President Herzog from Israel, by Prime Minister Lapid and alternate Prime Minister Bennett. You can hear the trumpets in the background. The dignitaries standing either side of the centre there, where we will be hearing live from them just shortly. President Biden is expected to say words. He's not expected to meet and greet a whole lineup of people as we've seen in previous years, and that's been attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic that is high now in Israel and the United States, and also to the scorching hot weather. They're going to try and keep this ceremony short, and then they'll be going inside the terminal to have a display and exhibit from Defense Minister Gantz, where he will see Israel's defense system. And really, that's the key message, I think, is that the first thing he sees will be about defense. Iran will be high on the agenda, as will be outreach to the region. Possibly we're hearing about a regional defense alliance against Iran, and potentially the beginning of normalization ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel. So right behind me, as we're speaking, the stairs are going towards the aeroplane, and President Biden will be stepping off the aeroplane any moment now.
Right, absolutely, Jody. As you said, Iran will dominate discussions, but also the US President will be meeting both leaders from Israel and Palestine. How is that bound to go?
So we're not expecting any major announcements, nothing like an opening of a new peace process or anything like that. But I think we can expect to see symbolic steps and small announcements. So we've seen the first phone call take place between Prime Minister Lapid, an Israeli Prime Minister, and President Abbas from the Palestinian Authority. That's the first phone call that's taken place in 5 years. There were also phone calls between President Herzog and Abbas and Defense Minister Gantz and Abbas. So symbolism there. We've heard that Israel is going to, has made some steps in terms of limiting construction and recognizing undocumented people in the West Bank and Gaza. We're hearing from some people in Israel are questioning, are there going to be any gestures on the Palestinian side? We haven't seen anything along those lines yet. I do know that President Biden on Friday will be visiting a hospital that works in East Jerusalem, works with both the Palestinian and Israeli health funds. And we're expected to hear about an initiative for funding to the value of something like $100 million for a Palestinian hospital network.
Right, Jody. Let's also talk about something else that you mentioned. This is Biden's first visit to West Asia as president, of course. It could produce more steps to essentially normalize ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Tell our viewers what this could imply.
So again, we're not expecting to see a big normalization announcement in the kind of thing we saw with the UAE, with the Abraham Accords. but they are talking about it potentially as the beginning, the start of the normalization process. And again, that might mean we see some announcements in terms of things like any direct flights between Saudi Arabia and Israel. We're having the first US president fly direct from Jerusalem to Saudi Arabia. So again, heavy on the symbolism, heavy on the direction of intent. But no major announcements expected on that front either. What we could see potentially is, well, we'll certainly see an update from Defense Minister Gantz to President Biden on the Middle East air defense alliance that is said to be growing across the region to deal with the threat from Iran.
Right, absolutely, Jody. It's interesting you're saying that no major announcements are expected, yet this is largely an exercise in diplomacy, while President Biden is facing a lot of heat back home in America, where gasoline prices are soaring. His ratings are at an all-time low. So tell us more about that.
Right. So, of course, oil is definitely on the agenda. They're talking about Saudi Arabia. They're talking about the Palestinians. They're talking about Iran. The one thing they're talking about less is the fact that oil is going to be so high on the agenda. The US will be going to Saudi Arabia and asking them to increase oil production in attempts to lower the prices domestically back home, which would obviously be a welcome move for the people back home. Another thing that we're going to see on the agenda, which they're talking about as a historic agreement, is the Jerusalem Declaration on the US-Israel Strategic Partnership, which is said to be a platform for cooperation in the coming years between the two countries, and will focus on how they will tackle Iran and also military cooperation and assistance going forward. So some big announcements, lots of rhetoric. We'll see over the next few days what concrete steps will come from this visit.
Right, Jody, but I think the big question is how much more oil can Saudi Arabia pump, and will this diplomacy exercise help alleviate the concerns of the American citizen?
So that is a question. We've heard that some people are saying that they can't pump more oil and they're really pretty much at their limit already. Other analysts are suggesting that that's not actually accurate, that there is scope for further oil production. And of course, this will be of real strategic interest to Europe as well, not just to America. If they're able to produce more, prices will come down and that will ease things. And obviously this has been prompted by the war between Russia and Ukraine, with placing heavy pressure on fuel. And so all eyes will be on whether or not President Biden will be able to get an agreement on that front.
Right. Let's talk about Biden's bid to promote regional stability. Of course, that is another goal that is being promoted by the U.S. administration. He says that the goal is to deepen Israel's integration in the region and counter Iranian influence. What can you tell us about that?
Right, so there is a lot of excitement in Israel about the fact that potentially we could be seeing some sort of announcement, some sort of steps towards normalization with Saudi Arabia. And of course, if that happens, it wouldn't just involve Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is very influential as a Gulf Cooperation Council member, as some would say, one of the leading countries in that council. So we could be seeing a Middle East air defense alliance growing between the GCC countries, with countries that have already recognized Israel, already for a couple of decades, like the Jordan and Egypt, with countries that have signed the Abraham Accords, countries like the UAE and Bahrain, but also potentially the countries that haven't yet recognized Israel. So talking specifically about Saudi Arabia, Oman, potentially Qatar. So this is huge potential for realigning the geopolitics of the region. And this will be very important, of course, for presenting a united front across the region against the threat coming from Iran, which is the number one concern for Israel, a very, very high concern for a number of countries in this region, and of course also for the United States.
Right, Jody, let's talk about some of the global critique that has come in for the U.S. president. The human rights issue, of course. Biden had earlier branded Saudi Arabia pariah, of course, over the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He's, of course, facing more heat as of now as he heads to Saudi Arabia. Let's talk about that.
Yes, of course, this was an election pledge on the part of Joe Biden before he was the president, saying that he would be calling Saudi Arabia a pariah state. He blames the Saudi Arabia for killing, and specifically Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, for the murder of Khashoggi. and talks about the poor human rights record in Saudi Arabia. Of course, now some in America are now saying that he's having to eat humble pie to go now to Saudi Arabia and almost put aside the human rights concerns. It was interesting that the envoy for anti-Semitism, Deborah Lipstadt, in her first trip abroad on behalf of the United States, was to Saudi Arabia, where she talked about some positive steps that she saw in terms of human rights and on the anti-Semitism front. So, yes, it is a reverse. People are talking about it as a reverse, that President Biden will now have to go to Saudi Arabia. He's expected to actually meet with the Crown Prince. Now, we're also hearing that there are not going to be any handshakes at all throughout this visit. And some people are saying, and from Washington, the message is that's because of COVID, that's because of the hot weather, that's because of to save time. But others are saying that potentially that is also to avoid any embarrassing photos of President Biden having to shake hands with Mohammed Prince bin Salman in Saudi Arabia.
Right, Judy, we're also given to understand that President Biden will spend 2 days in Jerusalem. Tell us about the engagements that he have lined up.
Right, so Thursday, he'll be in Jerusalem. He's actually going straight from the airport this afternoon. He's going to be going, first of all, to Yad Vashem. That's Israel's National Holocaust Memorial. And he's reportedly going to be meeting with 2 survivors from the extermination camps there. And we know that Holocaust education is something that's very important to the president personally. Thursday is going to be a day full of meetings. Potentially, he'll be speaking at the opening of the Maccabi Games tomorrow evening, Thursday evening. Now, that's the Jewish Olympics, and the Americans have got a big delegation of athletes there. Still not 100% confirmed if he will be speaking there, but he's going to be having a full day of meetings with Prime Minister Lapid, alternate Prime Minister Bennett, President Herzog, and also now the leader of the opposition, Benjamin Netanyahu. That was in addition to the schedule because of the announcement of a forthcoming election in Israel. He doesn't want to be seen to be favouring any of the candidates. So that's in addition to his schedule for Thursday in Jerusalem.
Right, Jody, thanks for those updates. And these are, of course, live visuals coming in from Israel. From the airport, President Biden has landed. He's, of course, being greeted by both Bennett and Lapid and Israeli leadership. The U.S. president has landed in Israel, in Tel Aviv, and this will be the first stop in his 4-day-long high-stakes West Asia tour. The visit, of course, will be dominated by efforts to persuade all Gulf allies to pump more oil and bring Israel and Saudi Arabia closer together. While no major announcements are scheduled, that's what experts are saying, President Biden will spend 2 days in Jerusalem. He will, of course, meet both Israeli leaders and even Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on Friday in West Bank. And afterward, he will take a direct flight from Israel to Saudi Arabia, something that is being watched by the world, which happens to be a first for an American president. And there he will hold talks with Saudi officials and attend a summit of Gulf allies. The focus, of course, is to convince Saudi Arabia to pump more oil. Biden is facing plenty of heat back home as U.S. citizens are battling soaring energy prices. U.S. officials also say that the trip, that is Biden's first to West Asia as president, could produce more steps towards normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Remember, both these countries are historic enemies, but also 2 of America's strongest allies in the turbulent region. The Biden administration says it aims to promote regional stability and deepen Israel's integration in the region and counter Iranian influence. Our correspondent Jody Cohen is still with us. Jody, let's talk about Iran. We've also had Iran comment on this trip. What can you tell us about that?
Right, so we know that Iran has said that things could actually escalate if this Middle East air defense alliance does come together. And they've also said that they believe it will be doomed to fail. I think we'll see that if there is this any announcement made on this air defense alliance, that potentially this is not a threat to Iran because this is a defensive alliance, but we might then see, I think that this is the thinking behind it, that we might then see steps taken on the Iranian side to rein in their enrichment of uranium, for example. We've already heard that Iran has enough enriched uranium for a nuclear bomb, which is alarming for people in Israel. The focus will now, of course, be on preventing Iran from having the ability to mount a nuclear bomb onto a missile. And this will be the number 1, 2, and 3 priority for Israel, a real concern for Israel and others in the region, of course. Behind me, I can just hear trumpets blowing, and I believe that President Biden is going to be walking towards the podium where he will be speaking to the crowd here. The crowd are about 150 strong on either side of the podium. We've got dignitaries there from across the political spectrum in Israel, from America, and we're going to be hearing shortly from President Biden, from Israel's President Herzog, from interim Prime Minister Lapid, and also potentially from alternate Prime Minister Bennett as well.
Right, absolutely, Jody, stay with us. We'll just tell our viewers about the significance of this meeting, of this visit. These are live visuals coming in from Israel.
משמר יחטיף את נשקו. חטף, צ'ק! כבוד הנשיא, Welcome to Israel. משמר כבוד של חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל ערוך ונכון לזכירתך. אדוני, Mr. President. משמר יציג את נשקו. צא, שק! משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
דבר כבוד נשיא מדינת ישראל, מר יצחק הרצוג. The President of the State of Israel, Isaac Herzog, will deliver his welcoming remarks.
Mr. President, welcome to Israel, our brother Joseph. Baruch haba liYisrael, achinu Yosef. The people of Israel welcome you to the Holy Land with open arms and joyous hearts, as Joseph, son of Jacob, who sought out his brothers. Here, Mr. President, you are truly amongst family. Like the biblical Joseph, you are both a visionary and a leader, committed to advancing the United States of America, the Middle East, the world at large, and the State of Israel. This historic visit reflects the deep partnership our nations share, a partnership rooted in our shared commitment to democracy, justice and freedom, tolerance, security, and peace. The State of Israel, in which you have just arrived, is a successful, innovative nation which contributes to Tikkun Olam, healing the world, through science and medicine, water and food technology, climate innovation, and so much more. Mr. President, you have been a true friend, Yedid Emet, and staunch supporter of Israel and the Jewish people, of our security and well-being, your entire life. In this visit, you will discuss the security challenges emanating directly from Iran and its proxies, threatening Israel and its neighbors and endangering our region. Your first trip here in 1973 was just a few weeks before a terrible war broke out. Today, winds of peace are blowing from North Africa across the Mediterranean to the Gulf. This trip, Mr. President, is your journey of peace from Israel to Saudi Arabia, from the Holy Land to the Hijaz. I hope and pray it will help advance a regional vision of prosperity, integration, peace and security for our entire region. So, dear friend, Baruch haba, welcome to Israel and welcome home.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
דבר ראש ממשלת ישראל, מר יאיר לפיד. The Prime Minister of Israel, Yair Lapid, will deliver his welcoming remarks.
Mr. President, this is both a historic visit and a deeply personal one. It is historic because it expresses the unbreakable bond between our countries, our commitment to shared values, democracy, freedom, and the right of the Jewish people to a state of their own. And it is a very personal visit because your relationship with Israel has always been very personal. You once defined yourself as a Zionist. You said that you don't have to be a Jew in order to be a Zionist. And you were right. And in your case, a great Zionist and one of the best friends Israel has ever known. You have not been here for a few years, so in the next couple of days, you will see how Israel has grown and developed. You will see the strength and smartness of the Israeli army, the creativity of the startup nation, the diversity of the Israeli society. Israel is a country that brings together the past, the present, and the future. Just moments ago, your plane, Air Force One, flew over where King Saul searched for his father's donkeys, above King David's rooftop, above the palm tree that Deborah, the prophet, sat under. You also flew over a world-leading high-tech industry, over agriculture that is helping improve food security around the globe, above universities and research institutes where Israeli scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, are leading groundbreaking research. During your visit, we will discuss matters of national security. We will discuss building a new security and economy architecture with the nations of the Middle East, following the Abraham Accords and the achievements of the Negev Summit. And we will discuss the need to renew a strong global coalition that will stop the Iranian nuclear program. There will be time for all of that. Right now, we are simply happy to see you, Mr. President. The simple, genuine joy brought by seeing a good friend once again. Mr. President, Baruch haba, welcome to Israel.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, אני מתכבד להזמין את אורחנו המכובד, נשיא ארצות הברית, מר ג'וזף R. ביידן ג'וניור. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., the President of the United States of America.
President Herzog, Mr. Prime Minister Lapid, it's an honor to once again stand with friends and visit the independent Jewish state of Israel. President Nixon was the first American president to visit Israel in 1974. My first visit was, as you mentioned, as a young United States Senator from Delaware in 1973, just a few weeks before the Yom Kippur War. I had the privilege of spending time with Prime Minister Golda Meir. I'll never forget, I was sitting next to a gentleman on my right when there were aides. His name was Rabin. I look back on it all now, and I realized that I had the great honor of living part of the great history of this country. And I did say, and I say again, you need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. The fact is that since then I've known every single prime minister, and it's been an honor. Formed strong working relations with each of them. And now, this is my 10th visit. Every chance to return to this great country, where the ancient roots of the Jewish people date back to biblical times, is a blessing. Because the connection between the Israeli people and the American people is bone deep. It's bone deep. Generation after generation, that connection grows. We invest in each other. We dream together. We're part of what has always been the objective we both had. I've been part of that as a senator, as a vice president, and quite frankly, before that, having been raised by a righteous Christian who we had dinner at our table every night before he went back to work. And it was a place where we had conversation and incidentally ate. And I remember he taught us all about what happened in the Holocaust. Why weren't the tracks bombed? Why did we not? Why? And he imbued in us a sense of obligation that we all have. And now as president, I'm proud to say that our relationship with the State of Israel is deeper and stronger, in my view, than it's ever been. And with this visit, we're strengthening our connections even further. We have reaffirmed the unshakable commitment of the United States to Israel's security, including partnering with Israel on the most cutting-edge defense systems in the world. From here, I'm going straight to a briefing on Israeli missiles and rocket defense capabilities, including the U.S. support for the Iron Dome and Israel's new laser-enabled system called the Iron Beam. We're going to deepen our connections in science and innovation and work to address global challenges through the new strategic high-level dialogue on technology. We'll continue to advance Israel's integration into the region, expand emerging forums and engagement like the new I2U2 summit, which will bring Israel, the United States, the UAE together, and India as well, to deepen our economic cooperation between the Middle East and the Indo-Pacific. greater peace, greater stability, greater connection. It's critical. It's critical, if I might add, for all the people of the region, which is why we'll discuss my continued support, even though I know it's not in the near term, a two-state solution. That remains, in my view, the best way to ensure the future of equal measure of freedom, prosperity, and democracy for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We're going to celebrate the ending of people-to-people connection and the enduring connection that binds our nations together, commemorate the history that we must never allow to repeat itself. Later today, I will once more return to the hallowed ground of Yad Vashem to honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide, and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost, so that we never, ever forget that lesson. You know, and to continue our shared, unending work to fight the poison of anti-Semitism, wherever it rises its ugly head. Wherever we find it in the world, we make real on the promise of never again by taking it on. We have a full agenda over the next 2 days because the relationship between Israel and the United States covers every issue that matters to our mutual futures. We're united in our shared values and our shared vision. I'm looking forward to our time together over the next few days. May Israel and the United States continue to grow and prosper together for the benefit of the entire world. And I mean that, for the benefit of the entire world. Thank you, and God bless you all.
משמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום. משמר יעבור לנוח, מות נוח.
נשיא המדינה, ראש הממשלה ונשיא ארצות הברית הצטרפו עתה לבימת המוזמנים לצילום קבוצתי חגיגי. The President of the State of Israel, the Prime Minister, and the President of the United States will now join the honorable guest for a celebratory photo.
Right, that of course was the US President Joe Biden, who gave an address alongside the Israel President and Prime Minister. Biden said that it is an honor to stand with the independent state of Israel. He said that Israel and the United States invest in each other, we grow with each other. He said that this trip will make the relationship deeper and stronger, and he reaffirmed the US commitment to Israel's security and also lend the US support for Israel's Iron Dome. And now to understand what the President meant and the ramifications of his speech, joining us now is our correspondent Jody Cohen, who is at the airport. Jody, thanks so much for joining us again. Tell us about some of the statements made by President Biden. He clearly said that he was here to reaffirm the US support for Israel's Iron Dome and also for Israel's security. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we talk about what was said in the speeches, I actually just want to point out the song that was played. So I don't think many people will be aware of this. But as President Biden was walking down the red carpet behind me from the aeroplane to the podium, a song called Machar was being played. And that means tomorrow, and the words of that song are incredibly hopeful. It's a very traditional song. It's all about how tomorrow is aiming for a better future. And I think those words really, really resonate with the mission, if you like, of this visit to West Asia on the part of President Biden. We heard in the speech President Herzog talking about how this was President Biden's very own journey of peace as he's come to visit Israel, the Palestinians and Saudi Arabia. We heard Prime Minister Lapid talk about how Biden himself describes himself as a Zionist. We heard him talk there as well. Biden said, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist, to believe in the right of the Jewish people to return to their ancient homeland. This is the 7th visit of a US president to Israel. This is the 10th visit of Biden personally and his first as president of the United States. And you heard him in his words that he feels a very strong, decades-long commitment to Israel. He's known every prime minister here since the 1970s. I heard him speak once about the time when he met Golda Meir, the first prime minister that he met, and Israel's first actual female prime minister. And she said to him, the Jews have got nowhere else to go, and that's why it is so important. That's why you'll always hear Israel talk about the importance of security. With the history of the Holocaust that President Biden also mentioned, and the killing of 6 million Jews in Europe, obviously security is number one. He's now going to be talking to Defense Minister Gantz, and he's going to see an exhibit of Israel's missile defense systems. We also heard from President Biden himself talking about the bone-deep connection between the American people and the Israeli people, how that's been going passed on from generation to generation. The Americans feel a true sense of obligation to Israel and sense of responsibility to call out anti-Semitism when they see it, to take action and to make good on their promise never again. Now, that is obviously a nod to the talks that will be taking place. And this very high on the agenda will be regarding Iran.
Right, that actually brings me to my next question, Jody. Just some final thoughts there. The Israel president also said that Biden and the Israel leadership will definitely be discussing the threat originating from Iran. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So that is the number one priority for Israel for this visit. It's also a top priority for the United States, of course, and for many other countries in the region. And that's why we're hearing there have been contacts between Israel and Saudi Arabia and Israel and other countries with which it doesn't have formal ties. There's been contacts between those countries over the years, and that really began with a joint security interest, and the concern is, of course, Iran. So we're hearing about, we're going to be hearing an update on the potential for a Middle East air defense alliance across the region with countries which Israel has got diplomatic ties with, and also involving potentially countries that it doesn't yet have diplomatic ties with. So Iran will be first, second and third on Israel's agenda when it comes to these meetings today, and also with the one-on-one meetings that will take place tomorrow.
Absolutely, Jody Cohen. Thank you so much for all the latest on-ground updates. Thanks for joining us on WION. We will, of course, to continue track President Biden's West Asia tour as high-stakes diplomacy gets underway. Stay tuned for all updates. Time now for a short break on WION. Don't go anywhere. Global News continues on the other side. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.